Hi, this is Cleveland City Councilman Kerry McCormack. While systemic racism in America has been with us from the beginning, the last few days and weeks have once again highlighted to the entire country what many of our community members know very well and live with on a daily basis. The hurt, anger, and exhaustion that systemic racism regularly inflicts on the Black community continues to be incredibly destructive with long-lasting impacts. Here in Cleveland, community members came out last Saturday to express that anger and frustration. I stand with these demonstrators who are calling out for real change. As a city, we've got to do better when it comes to ensuring that we maintain safe spaces to exercise our First Amendment rights. That means restraint from using police crowd control tactics and encouraging peaceful dialogue and free speech. I know that I will never fully be able to empathize with my friends and neighbors of color about the impacts of systemic racism. But that does not relieve me or anyone else of the responsibility to fight against it. Yep, systematic racism most acutely impacts communities of color, but the impacts bring down our whole society. While speaking out and making statements are important first steps and need to happen, action must follow. This is why I'm proud to support efforts in Cleveland to fight childhood lead paint poisoning, to fund nonprofit mortgage lending in historically redlined areas, to establish the right to counsel for those facing evictions, the fight against infant mortality, to support the decriminalization of marijuana, and to support police reform work done through the consent decree. In March of this year, I joined two of my colleagues as an original co-sponsor of the legislation that establishes racism as a public health crisis in our city, which unanimously passed City Council today. But we all know that our work is not done by any stretch of the imagination. We still have fundamental problems with policing and mistrust between the police and the community. Black-owned businesses are dramatically underinvested in. Housing lending practices are nakedly racist. Wage gaps are growing, public health disparities are rampant, xenophobia is thriving, and so much more. This is why I'm committed to listen, make more space for our many Black leaders, and to support and elevate Black voices and other voices of people of color. As your neighbor and as a policymaker, you have my commitment that I will never forget that the issues in Ward 3 and across Cleveland cannot be divorced from systemic racism. But I'm not going to tell you that policy and law reforms by themselves are going to rid our society of systemic racism. We've seen how official policy reforms have fallen short in changing society. Specifically, I'd like to speak to the white community in Cleveland and across the country. This is where we all need to accept responsibility, not as a means of me wagging my finger at you, rather to enlist you in the fight against systemic racism and to support communities of color. Whether it's at a family gathering, in a boardroom, or on social media, or maybe even in your own home, we have the responsibility to call out racism and work to educate others on the negative impacts it brings. In a recent conversation with Danielle Sidnor, the president of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP, she made a comment that really stuck with me. "Find your place in this work," she said. That's where I'm at right now, and I ask you to contemplate. Where do you fit in the work against systemic racism? Thank you so much.